Running crazy. Huh?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think this will work. How are you today? I might have to open this up just to write some notes.
We're just replying for the paper.
And if you need to go in another, whatever works.
I think this works, yeah. I think this is good. Give him the space. Thank you, though.
Here comes. Okay, this is.
Better bring the officer in here.
Oh, I think.
But does this work for you guys later?
I'll see.
Okay, then we're good.
Yeah, yeah.
Just look at me the whole time.
It's a touch from 100 degrees, I guess.
Sure.
Great, get in here.
All rise, the honorable.
You know, Congressman, I think we should give him a hand because we got rid of this horrible person that ran our education system because of all of our protests and one of our meetings last winter. And he did a great job. It's done. It's over with.
I don't know
We
anything
get to
about it. It's
hire,
none of my business.
we get to hire people that really have some metal, that have some American values in our education system because of that meeting.
Was he the one we got rid of then?
I was thinking we got. I was hoping he wasn't saying we got rid of this horrible education guy when he got elected to the Senate. So he didn't, but I was pretty sure that wasn't.
He went out.
Nobody was in town when I was
Yeah, no, right. Once an educator, always an educator. Rich. Yeah, huh? Isn't that right? Or once a coach, always a coach. I think we're right upon the hour. We are. So we're going to start on time because that's important to me because you're giving up the irrevocable gift of your time to me, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I realize we're in a small room, but I think it's going to work okay. I think we're just fine. So, and if she comes in with your orders, great, and if you want coffee and all that, we'll just let her sort of flow in and out and grab orders. We are handing around a sign-up sheet, which you are not required to fill out if you don't want to, but we'd certainly love to have your name and contact information if you'd like to do that. So this is my third coffee with Cramer, and I had this idea really about 3 years ago when I first ran for the nomination or the endorsement for this, for a couple of reasons. One is I love coffee, and I've had a whole bunch of it already this morning, so you guys can be in for it. Chris and I, my wife and I, are coffee drinkers, and we brew a lot, and we drink a lot, and we go through a lot of drive-thrus, and we try out every coffee shop along the way when we're traveling, and so there's that. The fact that it makes for nice alliteration is nice, but beyond that, the symbolism of sitting around and having coffee together and talking about the world's affairs is sort of a rich American tradition that I think works pretty well in this context. That, and then the fact that I love being a member of the People's House. I have nothing against senators, mind you, but I love being a member of the People's House because it holds such rich tradition. You know, the House of Representatives was a compromise, really, when the founders founded our great nation. And I love to talk about this with student groups when they come out to Washington. In the spring especially, they come out in droves, and we have town halls on the Capitol steps. And one thing about North Dakota students, and we've had a number of Dickinson students come out as part of various groups. North Dakota students, when they're out there in February, March, April, it's very warm to them. Now all these other people from other parts of the country think it's cold. Our students all find it very warm. So on a nice sunny 45-degree day, we'll often meet out on the Capitol steps. And we'll talk, we'll sit there and hold a little town hall. And I like to do it that way because for a couple of reasons. One, I like the students to get the sense of the symbols of democracy and of liberty. And when they've seen the monuments and they sit there on the steps, I always tell them, now I want you to imagine. First of all, I want you to forget all of the bad things you've heard about this town. Don't blame history or don't blame this town or these great symbols for the dysfunction of current residents. Just, I want you to imagine and sense the awe of that. On the other side of, I always point up to the House of Representatives, on the other side of that door, 435 of the people's representatives meet. And on the other side of that door is where the Emancipation Proclamation was passed. On the other side of that mall is where Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. And throughout the years, tremendous good things happened in the progress of this country in these halls. And the great thing about being a member of the House of Representatives and a member of the People's House, especially being the only one from an entire state. And it's funny how many people, in fact, it's funny how many North Dakotans and others don't think about the fact that most states have several members of the House of Representatives and we only have one. But what's equally impressive when you're in Washington is how many people from states that have lots of members never consider that we only have one. So yesterday I was at a hearing in Billings on the sage grouse and the Endangered Species Act with my friend Cynthia Lumbus of Wyoming and Steve Daines of Montana, 2 at-large members, and then a member, Doug Lamborn from Colorado, and Doc Hastings, the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee from Washington State. And it's really fun to sort of have those at-large members who represent 150,000 square miles or 100,000 square miles, or in my case about 72,000 square miles. And I love to have this little civics lesson on the Capitol steps. Because I always say, the greatest leverage that people have in a free society, in democracy, and in America specifically, is the next election. And so if you ever lose touch in the people's house with the people, they get to fire you. And the next election comes pretty soon. So I have this great opportunity. The other thing is this, that I've learned over the years, and I probably learned it, was probably validated more when I was on the Public Service Commission the last nine and a half years prior to becoming a congressman. Because during those years and these current years of tremendous development in the energy field, being an energy regulator and having hundreds of public meetings and dozens of hearings in the communities affected by the decisions of the commission, which is part of the law, you have hearings. And when you have hearings in a community, people show up. And when people show up, they're usually protesting something. And I found that it was one of the richest, not one of the richest part of public life in North Dakota was the public. And that you find collective wisdom in getting together and giving people a platform. And that through that, you learn a lot. Now, my best example of it, and then I want to get on to the things we want to talk about, was probably the original Keystone Pipeline. Many people forget there is a Keystone Pipeline. It was sited, the first 220 miles or so in America are sited in eastern North Dakota, through 9 counties, 2 scenic rivers, 600 landowners. Not 1 inch of it was condemned. 600 landowners in the eastern part of the state signed the contract. If you hired Sakakawea to find a worse route, she couldn't have. And yet we did it, because we have good people that understand the value of things, and we collectively working together. Now, my favorite example was, we were at a hearing or a meeting in Grafton, and the mayor of Park River said, I have no objection, but you know that you're going right through this aquifer that feeds our water supply. Of course, a bunch of engineers are a little embarrassed, and they said, well, okay, we'll move it over. So they moved the line over. Another guy, I love, a farmer, said, and by the way, I don't know how this works, but you're going right through a gravel pit right here. There's a big gravel quarry here. You might consider, it might be easier if you move it over this way. So they move it over this way. And I thought, wow, all this common sense, and doing something that a bunch of no doubt high-paid engineers didn't figure out. Nothing against engineers, mind. But what I learned is that the collective wisdom of North Dakotans is the greatest asset. So you can either be really smart or really resourceful, and I didn't have any resourcefulness. So I thank you for being here. Let me just give a little outline of what's going to happen in the next couple of months in Washington, what are the big issues, and then we'll talk about your issues. And I just lay these out because we're coming up on a very, I call it, frankly, sort of a treacherous couple of months in Washington. September 30th marks the end of the fiscal year. That means there has to be a budget going forward to run the government. And since the House has passed only 4 appropriations bills, you need 12 to have an entire budget. In the Senate, I don't know if they've passed any, if they have only 1 or 2. In all likelihood, we're going to be looking to continue the operations of the government, at least for 2 or 3 months, through what's called a continuing resolution. That means that you pass basically the existing budget. Of course, we have this Budget Control Act, new lower numbers, and there's going to be a big fight in terms of the gap between what is the discretionary budget going forward. So we're going to have that issue. That's going to be big. We have a farm bill. The current farm law expires September 30th. We will probably vote on a new farm, on the half of the farm bill next week. We've already passed in the House the farm piece of it. Next week, we're gonna work on the nutrition piece, the food stamp piece. The Senate has already passed both in one bill, and we can talk about that. And then hopefully we'll go to conference committee before the end of this month, and either by the end of September or early October, we'll have a completed farm bill. We also then, Secretary Lou, the Treasury Secretary, has let us know with a phone call a couple of weeks ago that we will hit the debt ceiling, probably in the middle of October. We were thinking it would be later in November, but now it's looking like it's going to be earlier. I don't know whether that's good, bad, or not, but it certainly crunches the time frame. So that'll be the next big issue right after the continuing resolution. In the middle of all that are some other big issues. Immigration reform, comprehensive tax reform,
Obamacare.
The Obamacare kicks in October 1st. And the reason all of those big issues are relevant right away is that what happens when you come up on deadlines, and I don't know if you've noticed, but Washington works best with deadlines because we just seem to sort of spin our wheels until deadlines come up and then big things happen, and sometimes it seems like they happen quickly. The reality is they've been going on for months and years with hearings and whatnot, but urgency sometimes creates spontaneity or what seems to be impulse. And what can happen oftentimes is all of these issues get thrown into a big negotiation hopper. And that's when you have to really watch carefully. So if for example, you're an advocate for a particular program, or it could be defense, it could be social services, it could be agriculture, whatever it might be, you've got to watch very, very carefully and be nimble, because things get thrown into that negotiation hopper, and before you know it, things happen that you didn't see coming. Now, as though all of that wasn't complicated enough, we suddenly have this serious situation on our hands. And of course, everything seems to be taking sort of a backseat to the Syria situation. I think that a war resolution or a military action resolution looks like it's going to start in the Senate. In fact, the resolution that passed the committee 10-7 just yesterday, maybe it was, or the day before yesterday, will be introduced today. Both the House and the Senate are going into pro forma sessions today to accommodate the introduction of that resolution into the Senate. And debate will begin in earnest. So we can talk about that and how we got there. I'm happy to, but I think at this point what I want to do is throw it open to you all to either answer your question, get your feedback, or talk about whatever else you might want to talk about. Just thank you for being here. Yes, sir.
Ladies, gentlemen, brothers, sisters, if we allow Obamacare to stand when it was illegally introduced and passed, ramrod, it will break our nation. We cannot afford to let a health care issue like this that's jammed down our throats to stand, because there will be no money left in your pocket to go to baseball games, to go to football games, to go to a fast food store. They're going to close up. Obamacare was introduced to break our nation by Obama. And that's his objective, is to break our nation. We've spent ourselves empty for years. And if that's allowed to stand, we are automatically going down the tubes. Voting won't matter. There won't be anything left. That's how devastating Obamacare is.
All right, let's talk about the Affordable Care Act for a minute and what I see possibly happening. We have in the House of Representatives over the last 3 years since the Affordable Care Act was passed, and you're right. The problem is the Supreme Court has not agreed with you in terms of its constitutionality or that it was passed legally.
Yeah, it's just a tax.
So it's there. So it's a tax, right?
Yeah.
Now, that said, the House of Representatives has voted now, about 40 times by most counts to repeal Obamacare. I've had the opportunity to do it 3 times myself, and I've only been there 8 months. The first time was on the 10-year balanced budget, which we passed. And a lot of people forget the House of Representatives has passed a budget that balances in 10 years. The Senate has passed a budget that never balances, but it does do you the good deed of adding $1 trillion to your taxes.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit apart on those two things. The second time was an outright appeal, or repeal of Obamacare.
all for
The third
head count.
time was just before we left. We did vote in a, vote to deauthorize the IRS, your good friends at the Internal Revenue Service, from fulfilling or enforcing Obamacare. They are the enforcement agency. One of the things I think that we have to, I think it's important to understand about Obamacare.
Everybody's got it now. Right?
First of all, Obamacare is an entitlement. It is mandatory spending. The vast majority of it is mandatory spending. So a continuing resolution, which, thank you so much, which we'll be voting on, before September 30th to continue the operation of the government, will be the first opportunity, you're probably hearing a lot about it, to offer up some sort of a defunding Obamacare package. The problem with the continuing resolution, all we really can do is defund the implementation of it. The taxes are there forever. I mean, they are, and the spending, which is over about 95, maybe as high as 99% of Obamacare is actually permanent law. That's not to say we can't change that law. So I want to be clear about that.
Good.
So,
it takes battles to win wars, though. So if
right, that's a great illustration.
If 1% of Obamacare is what you can defund,
Yeah.
it's $1 trillion program.
Right.
So 1% of $1 trillion is how much, sir? A lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
So you're taking that much money away. So I think you should join Mr. Cruz and Mr. Rubio
Yeah.
and the rest of these guys to defund. And if we have to shut down the government
Yeah.
to do it, we should be doing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that sounds great, and I think one of the resolutions that will be offered up will be to fund all of the government as per the Budget Control Act minus Obamacare. I think that'll be one of the resolutions. Of course, the House has the first say in that, the Senate has the second say, and they have the final say. And they will, in all likelihood, amend it and add Obamacare back in and then send it back to us. And then we have a situation where we're at loggerheads and we have to negotiate all that. Some people are happy just to do that because, as you said, John, about battles, it would be one more time that the House drew a line and lost, where we didn't get it done. Because Ted Cruz, with all due respect, and Marco Rubio can't get 60 senators to do what 234 members of the House of Representatives have done 40 times. So it's a little easier for them to suggest these things when they are the guys that never...
But put it back in Mr. Obama's lap. Let him make the decision that, okay, we're either going to shut the government down or we're going to defund Obamacare.
Right. But here's the thing, that may very well happen. I'm not saying it won't. I will tell you, my interest is in getting rid of Obamacare, not just pounding my chest, having a fight that we lose one more time, and feel good about it.
Sure.
So I want to think strategically and tactically in a way that leverages what leverage our little 1/3 of the government has. I'm not sure that the continuing resolution is that leverage, but we're willing to make some statements along the way. It may very well be that we have more leverage with the debt ceiling. It may be that with immigration reform, maybe, remember when you're only 1/3, your negotiating leverage isn't that great. But there's a tremendous commitment in the House. We've proven it 40 times. The challenge is the Senate. That really is the problem. Now, here's the other good thing, and I think a lot of people sometimes forget this. We have passed 7 bills that have actually been signed into law. Remember the 1099 bill? In fact, we passed just before we left, very interestingly, and I think this is optimistic. This is reason for optimism. And why I think we can chip away at this thing, if we can wipe it all out in one vote or not. 35 Democrats voted with all House members to codify what the president did in terms of delaying the implementation of the employer mandate by a year. 22, I think it was, voted with us to do the same on behalf of you, the working people, the individual mandate. That demonstrates that there are a bunch of Democrats going, oh boy. This is the value, by the way, of elections. This is the value of the people. And we're seeing this deterioration among his own ranks. Now that said, it's still no small matter. We have a lot. There's also, by the way, there's a school of thought, and this may seem irresponsible, that this thing is going to fail no matter what anybody does. That Obamacare has no chance. The problem is the damage it'll do in the meantime, because your point is right on.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing the reports coming out of the premiums. Look what the president did just before we left.
Sure.
He tried to exempt, he didn't exempt from Obamacare, but add the subsidy, not the subsidy so much as just, it is really a subsidy, of White House employees and congressional employees and staffers by providing premium support while we still go into the exchange.
75%.
More of a premium support.
Sure.
See, And why do you need that? Well, you need that because the premiums go up. And
Sure.
guess who it goes up on the most?
Sure.
Young people.
Yes.
Because without the contribution of young people who don't need comprehensive, the type of insurance that others of us need, the whole thing falls apart.
But that's where we, the GOP, are not very smart. Mr. Obama won because he used social media. And we're not going out there, and I commend you, you went on Hannity the other day,
Yeah.
but the morning talk shows, whatever, the Sunday
Yeah.
shows,
Yep.
and pounding the Democrats on the fact that they're making special deals
Yeah.
for their people
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
congressional
Yeah.
people, and business got a special deal.
Yep.
Why didn't the individuals get the same deal?
Yeah.
So those are the battles that I'm talking about,
Yeah.
that we should be going out and winning right
Well,
now.
and we may very well, we may win that one yet. Here's what, my only thing is this, and I want to hear from you, is I'm willing to do it all in once or in pieces, whatever gets the job done. What I don't want to do is burn a bunch of capital on losing battles. I think we have a little momentum here, and if we
Yes.
play it smart, I think we can succeed.
Is that subsidy in play?
We don't know yet until we get back there next week and we'll
Okay.
look it up. I've written a letter asking for it not to be in play, as
Okay,
have
but,
several other
but,
members.
but the problem is your liberal friends aren't gonna agree with you.
Here's what I would say about it's kind of an interesting dilemma. I've never voted for Obamacare, and what I find the most hypocritical thing about this whole thing is the very people, Obama himself, and the liberals in Congress that did are the ones that are pushing for the exemption for themselves and their people.
Sure.
And I'm going, wait a minute. What if let's do this. Let's say anybody that voted for it, you don't get an exemption. But if you're smart enough not to, you do. That would make sense to me. That wouldn't be hypocritical, So why would I impose on me and my staff something that I wouldn't impose on you? But anyway, do you need
Our
more
fine
orders?
server wants to know if
Anybody need
everyone
anything?
got what they wanted or if anyone needs anything else.
I don't see any caramel rolls around the table yet.
Well, it seems to me there's another targeting going on. You exempt the employers from the mandate, you give it government and
Yeah, right.
congressional people
25 to 35-year-olds.
75% of the cost, but we all gotta pay ours.
Yeah.
The seniors have absolutely nothing
Right.
in
Yeah, well,
Obamacare.
They got cut in Medicare.
Yeah,
They got
but
cut Medicare benefits. Can you imagine
But
that?
I'm in insurance business.
Yeah.
There is no guaranteed insurability on
No.
med supplements
Yeah, right.
for the seniors,
Yeah.
and that's probably the people that need it the most.
No question.
I mean,
No, it's upside down.
it's 80% of the people paying for the 20%
Yeah.
that don't have it again.
But let's see Marlene again.
I thought it was illegal for him to change the law after it's been passed.
Okay,
is.
Marlene
That's
raises an
another thing.
important point.
He's the king.
He's how is it that this president gets to unilaterally, enforce whatever laws he wants to not enforce other laws? And this gets into a lot of other areas as well. Here's how it happens. It's not that he does by executive order deems something a law or deems it not a law. What he does is he simply tells his enforcement agency, in this case the IRS, for a year don't enforce this one. Or or the border security. While I'm president, let's not enforce border security. And that goes all the way back to Ronald Reagan, by the way. That's how he does it. It's not by fiat, it's not by some executive order, but rather simply by lack of enforcement. That's how he carries it out.
He writes those things also into laws that are passed, that he gets this special privilege. And he bypasses the Constitution in doing so somewhat, he thinks, legally. I say it's still illegal.
It's very unfortunate the Supreme Court let him off the hook on this one by calling it a tax, and that was the out. Okay, so unless you really want to dig in deeper on that, I'm happy to, yes.
Could we change this up?
Yeah,
to
let's do
Syria?
that. Syria, okay.
What is your gut feeling in regards to what's going to
Yeah.
happen in regards to the vote?
What's my gut feeling on what's going to happen? It'll be very interesting to see what the Senate does, because it's clearly going to start in the Senate. They've already had, the House has had a hearing too now, but the bill's being introduced today. Obviously, the president's resolution is not, I don't think, going to be part of it. The Senate passed a different resolution. The president's resolution is very broad, gives him, imagine, a lot of authority. He will need 60 senators to pass it in the Senate. And I think that's a heavy lift, but it's possible. I think it'll come down to the last 2, 3, 4. It'll get very, very close, and the pressure, you'll see political pressure like you've never seen in your life on these senators. If in fact that does happen, the House will have a resolution, but if it doesn't pass the Senate, obviously there's no point in going to the House. If it passes the Senate, I guess that today I would say I'd say there's very little chance that a resolution would pass. What's really interesting to watch is, of course, there's no clear party distinction on this issue. In fact, I would maintain Democrats are having a much harder time with it than Republicans are, because they're inclined not to support it. Of course, they called George Bush every name in the book for doing something, for going after a man who's far more egregious than this guy, and so they're in a dilemma. So I have a hard time, but here's what I think, a couple things have to happen. And I've been quite clear about this in terms of my position. He hasn't talked to you all yet. He being the president. The guy who, by the way, did draw the red line. I know that there's been some confusion lately about that video that shows him saying it. Evidently it wasn't him, according to him. But anyway, it is his red line. He did say it. And
can I help you, sir? He's a pathological liar. He doesn't believe himself. He's not to be trusted. He's a Muslim.
Well,
he is after us.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I have two great concerns about it. I have several, but two really great ones. One is the president himself. And we can't not be Americans just because he's the president. That said, we also can't ignore that he is the commander-in-chief. This is a guy who 2 years ago said we needed a regime change, and he was right. He was right. When there were freedom-loving, spontaneous demonstrations that led to these freedom-loving warriors trying to topple Assad, that would have been the time, if ever, to support him. But he didn't. Today, when these rebels are infiltrated with Al-Qaeda, he thinks we should, because of the most recent use of chemical weapons. It's not the first time he's used them, but it's the
How
most
did
recent.
that work for us in Egypt?
Well,
I mean, come on.
Egypt,
We don't
Egypt,
belong in either place, and it's as simple as that.
It's not as simple as that, John. Because let me back up. Syria is not irrelevant for two reasons, in my view. One reason is it does border Israel. That cannot be ignored. I was on that border 3 weeks ago, looking into Syria, listening to the gunfire, looking at a rebel-held village at the same time I was looking at a provincial capital. It's not irrelevant for that reason. And the second reason it's not irrelevant is because Bashar al-Assad is a surrogate of the supreme ruler in Iran. But it does lead to another problem, doesn't it? And that is that this president, remember 5 years ago when he first became president, when freedom lovers rose up in Iran looking to the United States for help, he didn't know whose side to get on, and he said, well, I'm going to hold hands with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. I'm sure he's not as bad a guy as George Bush says, and we'll all get along swell because I'm a great diplomat. He's a cowboy. Well, guess what? That didn't work so well. Now they're building their nuclear capability while we watch. It's that lack of understanding and conviction and worldview that's got us here. And so I'm very reluctant to, if everything lined up perfectly, to give this guy, if I knew that our military could handle it, great, but I don't believe that Barack Obama can.
Can I speak as a military man?
Yeah, please.
You know, we need one destroyer to take out Syria.
Yeah.
We have 4 destroyers sitting there, and we have one of the largest flat tops sitting in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
And I woke up last night with God beating on my head saying, Iran's going to get mashed.
Yeah.
All of their nuclear capabilities that they're building on is going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
And these things sitting on the water all around there is just to wipe out Iran's navy, because they've built a sizable navy.
Yeah.
And we're going to bring in the B-2s.
In other words, this isn't going to be a real.
This is a
targeted
decoy.
thing. Okay.
Syria is a decoy.
So that's the other problem, isn't it? We get sucked into something bigger. So anyway,
Sure.
all of that said, there's two rules I live by. Don't say what you're never going to do, because that's giving away your vote before it's time to vote, and I don't like to do that. Second thing is, it would take something monumental for me to change my opposition to this, because, and I don't know what that is. You know, I haven't seen the evidence yet. I haven't had the classified briefing. I've just visited with leadership. But here's the bigger issue. John cites 76
76.83% of North Dakotans do not want you to vote to go into.
Well, let me tell you what the phone calls to my office are, and they're not just a few. We're not talking about dozens.
100 to 1.
99.5%
Sure,
opposed.
sure.
Now, somebody might say, well, that's inappropriate. We don't go, No, it's not inappropriate when you're the people's house and you're there to carry out the will of the people. There are times, clearly, that you have to, we're a representative republic, but I think this is fairly overwhelming. So, that's my concern about Syria. I have several concerns about Syria, but I would certainly hope, I was on Sean Hannity yesterday and he asked about making our friends in Israel a target of retaliation. I thought, I can't believe that we've been considering this without considering Israel. I mean, I assume that they're in it with us or we wouldn't be doing it. I certainly wouldn't advocate making them a target of retaliation. So, that's where I am on Syria today. All that and lots of other reasons.
As crazy as those people are, they're not going to do that. The Chinese aren't going to do anything because without us, they don't have an economy.
Right.
I mean, everything they sell comes to the United States of America almost. The Russians are crazy, Putin's crazy, but I don't think he's that crazy. So I think that's just a decoy by John McCain and the rest to try to fuel the fire to say, yep, they're going to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, if we don't go in and try to save them. And then the humanitarian deal, that's a joke. Think about this a minute. 10,000 people are killed in this country in a year from gang violence. Sure. Gangs do human trafficking, drugs, and everything else. Estimated $200 to $400 million, 200 to 280 million for a 4-day campaign to bomb Syria with the missiles. So why don't we take that 280 million up to 400 million and go into the south side of Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, and the fact that the Bloods and the Crips are getting into, and you can smile, but the Western Bakken right now, that is a fact. I have a friend who's an ex-cop in Chicago that has a security right now out there, and that is happening. So why not take care of our own people for a change and take that money and get rid of the gangs? Kennedy did it when he was Attorney General for this country, when he went after the mafia and stuff. It can be done. Sure. So when are we going to take care of the United States of America and the people of the United States of America?
I would submit to you, all those are valid and true, and we ought to do all that.